No matter what it is or who you are, everything and everybody's got a backstory. Your favorite song, your least favorite songs, the movies you love, the movies you hated. Even people who write books have got a story to tell about the book. And everybody who creates anything, writes something, records something, or does anything has got a story to tell. And today is no different. Welcome to Baxie's Musical Podcast. If you like what you hear today, share it, rate it, review it, pass it around to all your friends. Also be sure to follow the show on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook for regular updates on upcoming episodes. Today we're brought to you by Metro, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram at Chicopee. Visit Metro's state-of-the-art dealership right next to BJ's and Big Y on Memorial Drive, or visit metrojeep.com and drive home in your new Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram today.
It's Baxie's Musical Podcast.
Resistance is useless.
Today, I'm going to give you a little bit of a history lesson. Today, you're going to learn about a little-known and comparatively short-lived band known as the Hollywood Stars. Now, before you say, what the hell are the Hollywood Stars, hear me out on this one. The Hollywood Stars were a band formed in 1973 in Los Angeles by legendary producer, songwriter, and impresario Kim Fowley. Now, we could easily do an entire episode on Kim Fowley's early achievements, from producing novelty songs to creating a fistful of hits to once managing the band The Runaways featuring Joan Jett, Sherry Curry, and Lita Ford. But in this particular case, he put together the Hollywood Stars as a direct West Coast response to the New York Dolls. And while it didn't quite work out that way, here's the short version of what happened. This was a band that had been involved in a bidding war between several major record companies in 1973. The winning bidder was Columbia Records, and by the following February, they went into the studio for what they hoped would be their first album. The record was to have been produced by Bob Ezrin. Somewhere in the middle of recording, Ezrin backs out of the job, and the sessions are canceled. In the meantime, Kim Fowley allows Ezrin to take one of the band's songs for his next project, the platinum-selling 1975 album Welcome to My Nightmare by Alice Cooper. The song he took was the song Escape. Fowley also allowed Ezrin to poach another Hollywood Star song entitled King of the Nighttime World. That song was recorded for another multi-platinum selling album, 1975's Destroyer by Kiss. Both great songs, and the original was freaking great. The Hollywood Stars were then introduced to producer Bill Zimzik, who was hired to finally produce another shot at recording an album in 1976. 34 days later, Zimzik backs out of that project after a round of turnover occurs within the record label, the result of which made it impossible for him to continue, and after another failed attempt to complete a record, the band was then dropped from their contract. The Hollywood Stars would wind up breaking up shortly after these debacles, while those two records sat on the shelves and collected dust. And yes, that is the short version of the Hollywood Stars story. It would be another 37 years before any of that music would be released and see the light of day. That first album would be released in 2013 as Shine Like a Radio, the lost 1974 album. And their lost album from 1976 called Sound City was finally released in 2019. Both were released to enthusiastic critical praise, and last year, the Hollywood Stars released their first set of new songs since Sound City was recorded in 1976, a 4-song EP entitled Still Around. This year, the band will release their latest album, Starstruck, with singles like Taxi Driver and Can't Do It Right, and it's absolutely fantastic. And again, that is the short version of what happened. The longer version includes my guest today, Jeff Jourard, who joined the band in 2023. Now, here's the thing about Jeff Jourard. Jeff is one of the original members of Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. He's not only all over Tom Petty's first album, Tom Petty is wearing Jeff Jourard's leather jacket on the front cover. On top of that, Jeff Jourard is also a former member of the Motels with Martha Davis. His story is every bit as interesting as the band that he's now playing with, perhaps even more so. This is my interview with Jeff Jourard from the Hollywood Stars, the Motels, and Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers on Baxie's Musical Podcast. Man, it's great to have you on today. It's one of these things where, like, the more I'm reading, the more I'm studying, I'm like, Hey, this is a great story about you. And you know the thing is, I'm a sucker for a great rock story, and the problem I have is I now have two really great rock stories involved here. I mean, not just with the Hollywood stars, but the Jeff Jourard story is pretty amazing too. You got these two separate journeys that collide together a little more than a year ago, and now you got a great record out of this that's coming up this month. Tell me about that collision of what's going on here.
You mean the fact that I'm in 3 bands?
Yeah, well, not the fact you're in three bands, but that it's you're no slouch. That's for damn sure.
Well, thank you.
So the new record is awesome to the point where I really felt I needed to go back and listen to their first two records, Hollywood Stars, Sound City, and
Mm.
Shine Like a Radio. The new record totally holds up, even though this is really the first album of new music that didn't take them 30 years to release. Tell me about this new record. I love it.
Well, half of it was done before I got there. If you read anything about how we got to this point, there were a number of reunions, and the most recent one, after a couple of shows, two of the guys decided that they wanted to branch out into something different, and they left. But the album was sort of half recorded, and so there was like a dip in progress where they decided what to do. So a mutual friend of all of ours recommended a guy I didn't know. This is what's interesting, to come in and play guitar. That's George Keller. George Keller came in and did the first half of the CD that's coming out in a couple weeks. And then there was another pause. And during that pause, I was looking for a simpler way to deal with all the pedals I used with this cover band I'm in called the Hollywood Rivieras. We just do covers. And with covers, you got to cover a lot of territory. So a lot of guitar pedals. And it was driving me crazy. I know there's a better way, right? So I started looking at these multi-effects units, the modelers and the floor units. And I picked one out at random and found a really good demo on YouTube. And the more I listened to it, the more I went, never mind the pedal. Who's this guy? He's really good. So I started a message thing with him, and we started geeking out like crazy over equipment. It was like talking to myself, And that led to, well, geez, we should just get together and like play some. So where do you live? When we exchanged addresses, well, he lived like 6 blocks away after all that. So I go over there and we're having a blast, and he says, why don't you come and see about this band that I recently joined? I think you'd dig it. It's easy for you. You just play rhythm. You can almost coast through it. How about it? So I went to one rehearsal. I kind of liked what I heard, and they asked me back. So even though that's not really my home territory anymore, when I first got to LA in 1972, that kind of glamish rock was the thing. That's what was happening right then. And I drifted away from that, the Motels and this band and that band, and kind of left it behind. So when I came back and listened to this kind of music, I went, oh, I've been here before. I know how to do this. This will be fun. So the next time I showed up for a rehearsal, they were doing a photo session. And at that point, I've decided, well, I guess I'm in the band. That's how it came together. And very shortly after that, some session time was booked, and I finished the second half of the CD with them.
The story behind this band is absolutely crazy to me. I mean, and we'll go through a little bit of it. I mean, I know you weren't a part of it, but just a little bit of it we'll talk about. But how much of their history were you even aware of?
Not a whole lot. When I got here, it was for a specific project, and I mostly focused on that. I was living with a guy that had invited me out to join his project by the name of Chris DeMarco. Hi, Chris. And he happened to live across the street. I mean, across the street, the driveway is matched. Across the street from Michael Monarch of Steppenwolf, who was in a new band, which became Detective. It was Hocus Pocus at the time, but it quickly became Detective. And so though the guys that lived over there and Chris, those are the only people I knew in town. So I drove around a bit, but I saw the Hollywood stars on marquees, like at the Starwood, and I can't remember the other venues, but I kept seeing them. So I knew they existed, but I had no idea what it was about. You know, that's it. That's how much I knew about them.
The simple story here is this is a band that was formed by Kim Fowler as like a West Coast answer to the New York Dolls, and very much like the New York Dolls, they probably had to be the second unluckiest band in the world. I mean, these guys were sought after. There was bidding wars going on for these guys. They had a bunch of songs. They get into a studio, and that's when everything goes to hell. And whenever I read a story like this, it's always like, you know, what motivates a band to continue after getting, you know, their shit kicked out of them more than a couple of times. And this is one of those bands where, you know, they record stuff, and then next thing you know, two of their songs are being used on multi-platinum selling albums that were not theirs. And in this case, you know, Escape going to Alice Cooper for Welcome to My Nightmare, and King of the Nighttime World by Kiss. I mean, that's a record I listened to as a kid, and no idea that this had come from the Hollywood stars.
Yeah, it's like they couldn't get a break. The way I understand it is that it was all lined up. The record was either released or mastered and ready to go, or whatever the deal was. I mean, they were on the precipice, and there was a huge changing of the guard at the record company, and a whole troop of East Coast guys came in and replaced all the West Coast guys. And the first thing they did was erase history. So any project that was pending or signed by the previous administration was canceled, and Hollywood stars were a victim to that. That's how they just got sent into limbo. And then after that, of course, band broke up. Kim Fowley had other interests. He went on to like conjure up the Runaways. It was the same thing. Yeah, he's an idea man, or was. He's gone now. He would conjure up these ideas and then like put it together. You know, he would hang out when he was putting the Hollywood stars together. I understand that he got the idea, and he started hanging out at the Whiskey and the Roxy and the Rainbow, and the Roxy was new then, and finding likely looking subjects. I think he went to Rodney Bingenheimer's English Disco too. Like, you look the part. Can you sing? You know, that kind of thing. Yeah, well, I want you to try out for this project I got. So it wasn't like most bands where one or two guys like have the burn, and they started out and they find other guys to get on board. Everybody was on board, and there was like no leader except for Kim. So when Kim like just moved on to other things, it just fell apart.
Yeah.
A year or two later, and you'll have to ask one of the guys about this that were there. I've just heard this, you know, from hand-me-down information. They got the bug to play some more. So they called each other up. They located Michael Rummans, who's been in so many bands, on bass. And that was the band from that point forward. And then it gets really checkered. And I'm confused after that.
But you know, so my understanding is those records took years before they were ever actually released to the public. And when you're asked to join the band, and you're learning either the new songs, but maybe some of the old songs too, just for, you know, the purposes of playing them live or whatever. When you're hearing those songs for the first time, what was your impression of what they had recorded?
I remembered how popular that bone dry production style was in the 70s. I mean, everything dead. Drums, pip, pap, poop. Guitars, like, you know, no depth or muscle to it at all. And if I remember correctly, the idea was your excellent sound system in your excellent living room was going to provide that ambience that was supposed to create the effect that the band was actually in your living room. And so whatever your room did to the sound, that would be the most authentic experience, you know. And so their records sounded like that, very, very dry, very dead. But the musical style, it was like, I don't see why this didn't go somewhere. It sounds like Sweet. It sounds like, I can't think of another name right now, but I mean,
Yeah, but I mean,
it's right in there. It's right in there with that 70s vibe,
very,
right?
very, very power pop type of stuff to me. When I'm hearing it. So when I hear now the new record, and I'm hearing songs like Taxi Driver and Can't Do It Right. I mean, those first two tracks, the first one's released on the new record, and they're both really, really good. But the one song that I thought was the most interesting to me was the version of Total Control, which you had written with Martha Davis in the Motels back in 78, 79.
Yeah, 78. Uh-huh.
I mean, it's
That was not my idea. I mean, it looks like I showed up with a suitcase full of ideas and like, come on, guys, let's do this song. No, that was the last thing on my mind, and it didn't seem like even something that would, I should even bring up. Are you kidding? That song for this band? No. So it didn't even occur to me. Scott, when he like figured out my past, he went, "Oh, I always loved that song. You mind if I do that song?" And I'm thinking, well, no, I don't mind. I never thought you would want to, but yeah, sure, go ahead. So it was really Scott. It wasn't me at
yeah.
all. And we tried it like the way I used to know it, very stately, very slow, very almost, you know, almost like a funeral, right? Uh, and it just was dying a death, It's like, nice try, guys. And Lauren Molinaire, who's like kind of shepherding us through this phase of our career, he said, "Why don't you try speeding it up?" And I thought, well, that's going to make it sound silly. We'll see what you can come up with. And so I was thinking, what have I heard that was a little faster than that I really dug? And I kicked around and I finally remembered, oh yeah, Paul Westerberg
Mm.
had this track called "I'm a Dirty Diesel." I really like that song. So I took that as inspiration for the tempo and kind of how to accent it, bop, 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 and we went through it about 50 times, and we finally it gelled, and that's the way it got recorded.
It sounds totally awesome, and like you say, I mean, it's so different than the original that to go back and listen to the original, and then you even go back and listen to the Tina Turner version of it. He's like, well, I mean, I think you improve the song in a way. It's just more lively. It's got a little bit more pop to it.
Yeah, I mean, there was no place left to go. You can't top Martha's version at that tempo,
Yeah.
Because the whole premise for that band, the way I envisioned it, was like a black velvet background framed around Martha. So it kind of minimized our parts, minimized the band, just tried to place her in as stark relief as possible. And, only she has that voice. So it's a losing battle to try to like cover it exactly as the original. So you have to take it to a new place or it just dies a death.
Yeah.
In fact, even Tina, that wasn't really a slam dunk. The reason Tina did it, it was the same producer as the Motels, and he brought it with him, said, try this. She didn't really get a killer read on it. It's not her vibe. It's not her mood, even though Carter thought it would be. John Carter, the producer, didn't really click. And I think that is the reason why they chose that track to donate to the charity, We Are the World. And I think that's the reason they chose to let that one go, because you don't get any royalties, for a donated song to a charity. So they must have thought, well, we didn't write this one, and it didn't really nail it. So we'll give them that one. That's why I think the Tina version is on that compilation. And so what are you going to do with it? You got to give it a fresh read. And so we did.
You joined the Motels with your brother.
I didn't join
You
the
didn't
band.
join. You didn't join. Well, explain what did happen with the Motels.
It's kind of a moot point, but it always bugs me, like, oh, you were the guitar player? A little more than that. So I had a birthday that was disturbing because I hadn't done anything with my life, and kicked around and decided nobody in town knows me. What's the best way to get known? Be in a band. Okay, what band do I want to be in? Well, the three bands I would want to be in were a little local band called Axecraft, another little local band that nobody'd heard of yet called Quiet Riot,
Okay.
and this artsy band I'd seen at a couple of shows called the Motels, and what that's the greatest band I've seen in town. They're so New Yorky, I had this fantasy about Velvet Underground, really, and tried to find out where they were. I thought, well, chances are maybe a guitar player is getting ready to leave, and I could just slip right in there. Couldn't find them. Asked around. Nobody knew where they were. The only people who seemed to know anything about where they were said, "Oh, they broke up. They all went back to Berkeley."
Mm.
Fuck, oh, sorry, that can't go out. I said, "Oh, darn."
You can say whatever you want, Jeff. It's okay.
Okay. Oh, fuck. So, uh, that was the end of that. And I answered an ad for a guitar player that mentioned Motels as an influence, which was Dean Chamberlain's band, the former guitar player from the Motels. So after about a week, I kind of finagled Martha's phone number out of him because that's really where I wanted to go. I thought she was a great front person. And I showed up and told her we're starting a band. She said, "I already have a band." So I said, "Well, let's go see what they're like." And it was her friends, and it was like social and a lot of camaraderie, but it wasn't the right combination. It wasn't the right people. Mostly they got together and reminisced and played the same 4 songs and drank some wine and beer. And there was just no go in that group of people. And I was in the headspace that Gina Schock was in. I just listened to most of her interview with you.
Oh, good.
And how she was just like so focused on one thing. And that was my headspace then. That was me at that time. And much to her discomfort, I convinced her to get rid of all those guys and we'll start a new band from scratch. And that's what we did. We auditioned different, the whole bunch. And the hardest to find was the drummer. I think every drummer in LA can honestly say they auditioned for the Motels in 1978. Anybody that was looking for a position, we went through all of them. And the problem was every one of them either wanted to be John Bonham or Billy Cobham. And we were looking for Charlie Watts. Well, anyway, Tim McGovern, who Martha was seeing at the time, said, "I wonder what Brian is doing." Brian Glasscock. He's been in a lot of things. He was on the Bee Gees. He did a couple Bee Gees tracks. He was in Toe Fat, if you've ever heard of that band, and a bunch of other projects. So anyway, he came in. He was perfect. He's English. He had that Charlie Watts vibe about him. So there we were. And I think I'd mentioned in passing that my brother played sax, and Martha lit up. "Your brother plays sax? Oh, bring him in. We'll use him on like one song and maybe a bunch of songs." So Marty comes in and he plays a little keyboard. And Martha had this immense synth keyboard called a Polymoog that was the most complicated product they ever made. And it was so many sliders and buttons and connections. If you ever opened it up, it looked like entrails in there. It was millions of wires, and not a reliable machine. But anyway, she had it, and so Marty started plinking on it. And so over time, he became the keyboard player and the sax player, and that is how the band was formed. Not that I joined the Motels.
Right. So
okay, put that to bed. I've
Okay.
said my piece. We're not coming back.
You said your piece, but you did leave after that. But I want to talk about what happened before the Motels, when you're still in Gainesville, Florida, and you meet some guy who happens to be Tom Petty. And I don't know whatever happened to that guy. I don't know if he ever really succeeded in his career.
Yeah. You don't hear much about him anymore.
No, you really don't. You really don't. But the reality is, you're in the Heartbreakers, and you're on that first record. I mean, you're all over it. 1976.
Yeah.
It goes gold. You get Breakdown, An American Girl. He's even wearing your jacket on the cover. Tell me about that period. I mean, he was being groomed as a solo act, but then needed to have a band behind him. Tell me about how you even got involved in all that.
It was a demo session for Benmont Tench, the piano player for Mudcrutch. That's the band that came out from Gainesville to LA. with a pit stop in Tulsa where Denny Cordell signed them on the spot. The Mudcrutch had two main writers in it, Danny Roberts and Tom Petty. And they were struggling for control of the band, and there was a lot of drama. And when it got to the point of the record didn't sell well. In fact, it hardly got noticed. There was a lot of disappointment, and they just disintegrated, went
Right.
their separate ways. Tom was retained by Denny as a solo artist because he was a songwriter, and Denny had a healthy appetite for copyright, which is a whole separate drama. And they went all their different ways. Benmont had written some songs, and he had secured some time at Village Recorders, pretty prestigious studio. Don't know how he did that, but he was knocking out some demos. And at the time, I was living with Stan Lynch's sister, and Stan was either spectating or playing on these demos. And he called me up one night and says, "Hey, man, we're cutting some demos over here, and it's coming out great. You got to get down here. This is a blast. Bring your guitar." So I did, and it was so easy because all these guys are from the hometown. So much is like already understood that's unspoken. You hear a beat, like you already know where we're going with it, and how to flesh it out. So it came out really good. Ben shows the tracks to Tom. Don't remember if he came by to visit or if Ben wanted to show off what he was doing, whatever. I don't remember the details. Tom was really impressed because he had been doing sessions paid for by Denny with really top flight LA session guys. And for all of their, strong points, in tune, on time, repeatable, get it the first time, great tone, blah, blah, blah. They were precise, but they didn't have that home feeling, that sort of soulful feeling. And the demos had it, and Tom wanted that. So one by one, he started including us on those sessions until it was all us and no session guys. And they were coming out so good. We were phoning each other, not Tom, but the members, going, I think we have a band here. It's not just, backing band with Tom. It sounds like a band to me. And Tom's attitude was like, please, no more bands. I've had enough drama with bands. I'm perfectly happy with my solo career with Denny. And Denny convinced him, at least for appearance's sake. He said, the public really has a warmer attitude towards a star that's in a band than a star without a band. So he went with it, and we went through like a ridiculous bunch of names, the Pickups, the Fangers, we were Nitro for about a month. And then out of the blue, he says, I think I've picked our name. It's going to be Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. And I went, I know that name. That's Johnny Thunder's band. You can't just lift it. He's already out. And Tom said, well, I don't think he's going anywhere. I don't know where he got the idea, or maybe he just felt that like Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers was enough to make it, legal. So he just took it, and we went, okay, we're the Heartbreakers now. And that's how Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers formed. It was just sort of like a compromise between a solo act and a band.
So what happened after that record? I mean, that was the only Tom Petty record that you were a part of. I mean, were you let go? Did you leave on your own? What was the situation there?
Yeah, I was let go. The truth of it is, they're simple songs, and he did not like cluttered arrangements. I liked composers and arrangers like Nelson Riddle and some of the jazzier stuff from Henry Mancini, where there's always something new to listen to. Tom really didn't want that. He was more Buddy Holly, Elvis Presley. And if there was 4 bars where there was nothing but D major, he was perfectly fine with that. And I was uncomfortable with that. I kept sticking things in, and he was like, nope, 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 just straight ahead, man, straight ahead. So I kept trying to find a more and more simple, indispensable part that you just couldn't live without. you know. And the fact is, Mike Campbell had worked with him for years already, and he had the inside track. And we were kind of competing to who could play the least and still be on the on the track. And the truth is, I was struggling to find a place for myself in the band. I didn't have any trouble in the studio because it worked in the studio. But as we were rehearsing, I was just kind of redundant. I was kind of duplicating what Mike was doing and didn't have anything to add that wasn't considered too decorative. So yeah, they let me go right before they went to England, which was kind of a painful experience. And they went to England, they got a lot of press, they came back, highly touted. And that was a rough spot for me.
So moving forward, you're a part of the Motels.
Yeah, well, my reaction to that was get back on the horse,
Right.
and so that led me to rebuild the Motels with Martha.
Once the Motels moved on and you moved on, there was a period of time where you were doing some projects, but for the most part, you kind of walked away from music. I mean, I assume by this point you were pretty frustrated by what you had been through. But what did you do after all of that?
Well, after the Motels, which was an ejection, by the way, that's good. That's a good story for another interview. Anyway, I've been kicked out of some of the best bands in the business. That should be my T-shirt. I actually didn't quit. I got right back on the horse, and I was in a series of bands, and it wasn't the perfect storm anymore. So none of them clicked. The feeding frenzy had cooled off. That was another thing about the Motels. We were super ready at the time that the industry was just ravenous for new acts in the wake of the knack, and
Right.
even though we weren't new wave and we weren't punk and we weren't any definable style, we seemed to be a perfect go-between between the Cars, Blondie, and Patti Smith. They just seemed to be like that missing link. So that feeding frenzy was over, and after about 4 or 5 new attempts, then I did kind of just say fuck it,
Yeah.
and I got a job and just sort of drifted. I did a long series of off and on bands with a friend of mine, Graham Daddy, who's gone now, and in fact, I have his ashes on my
Oh,
desk.
wow.
We were quite close. A long series of sort of R&B blues bands that, it was a bar band. It's a really good bar band. When he died, I did say screw it and retired and just figured, I'll see if I can get into songwriting as a profession. Not cut out for it. I
Yeah.
write like 2 songs a year. You need like 2 songs a week to be a real songwriter. I did quit. And a few years before the pandemic hit, I got invited out of the blue to join a covers band. That's the Hollywood Rivieras. And like, they rehearse once a week. That's easy. Play once a month. That's easy, and that was totally digestible.
So by the time the Hollywood Stars situation comes around, was it something that you felt like you were able to just jump at, or was there hesitation for you knowing the kind of situations that you had been in the past?
Well, I didn't think that they would be any more active than the other 2 bands I was in. Everybody's old now, and nobody's going to be a career climber at this point. We're sort of not really in retirement, but in a different phase of life, different phase of the career arc. It's a little more important to maintain your inner peace and not be subjected to too many fierce winds, right?
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I didn't jump at it so much as I felt like I'm not sure I can honor this and do justice to it with the amount of time I have. I don't see how I can juggle 3 bands. And so I just decided to wing it, just say yes and see what happens. And it is complicated. I keep a paper calendar that is so color coded to keep the band straight. I mean, I can't keep it straight without, the Hollywood Stars are blue and this other band is green and the third one's orange. And that's how I keep them straight. it may come to a head yet and be impossible to juggle, but so far so good. So yeah, I didn't jump at it only because I wasn't sure I could, follow through and be reliable. But so far I've been there.
So for the rest of the guys in the band, especially Michael, Scott, and Terry, who have been at this for a while, to put this band back together, to reform, to record new music, and then have people revisit, what the Hollywood Stars were really all about. This has to be kind of a pretty amazing time for you guys as a band, that there is interest, and that you have played live, and it has gone over very, very well, and the people are looking at these these two first singles and going, where the hell have these guys been? It's gonna be really validating for guys like that.
Oh, it's magnificent. I mean, it's so validating. You feel like your most exciting days are behind you, and because I mean, everybody in this band, I think, is over 70. I mean, that's ridiculous. The fact that this can come out and can be pretty damn good too, and it's a bunch of old farts, that by all accounts should be, in a retirement home. I mean, not me, but
But those older
but
guys, yes.
superficially, it just seems like 70 something. You got to be kidding me. Plus, with nothing in between. Maybe the guys in Queen, maybe the guys in Judas Priest. They've been there all along. That's different than like coming out of like cryogenic storage, and suddenly reappearing, which is I feel like what's happened. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. At the age you're at, it's a really good effort. I mean, I really enjoyed listening to it, and it doesn't sound like a band of 70-year-old guys waiting to go to the home. It sounds like a band that picked up where they left off.
Yeah, well, you talk to old people and they say, I'm the same on the inside. I just look like hell, you know? So, I mean, everybody's got a lot of experience behind them, and they know what to do, and they bring their A game with a lot of passion. And everybody in the band took it quite seriously. They dug deep and brought it. If they ever had it before, they brought that. And so it's timeless, it's ageless. It's not a blast from a bunch of old farts. It's a blast from the timeless river of rock.
It sounds very much like a continuance of what they had done back in 1976. I mean, it really does.
That's
And that's not simple to recreate at all.
No, you had to be there.
Yeah, exactly.
You had to be there to draw upon it to be able to continue it.
The album is coming out, Starstruck, later this month. It's like I said, it's really, really good. Jeff, it's a real pleasure to talk to you, and I wish you guys all the best of luck.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Great to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Jeff. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
The name of the new album from the Hollywood Stars is called Starstruck, and it is awesome. Thanks for listening. I hope you liked it. If you did, feel free to share it, review it, talk about it amongst friends. Be sure to like it and follow along on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok for regular updates. You can also email me at bax@rock102.com. I'd love to know what you think. Thanks to Metro, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram at Chicopee, and thanks to all of you for listening to Baxie's Musical Podcast.